Hello, I'm Paul from Contract Renovations and Custom Homes. Welcome to the Art of Renovation Live. On today's show, we're going to talk about all things interior design and vintage decor. This week's guest is Rosalyn Lazaruk from Wicket Interiors, and she also owns Tipsy, a curated vintage market. So these two topics go really kind of hand in hand. As you get through design, you'll also be considering your decor, and depending on what style you have, some vintage items might be just what you're looking for. I know recently I got my wife a birthday gift from Tipsy, and it's like there's so much cool stuff to look through. So we'll go through that a bit later in the show. We'll start off with interior design, and then we'll move into the vintage decor. But there's so much overlap, I'm sure we'll jabber about both all the way through here. I'm going to pull in Rosalyn. Give me a sec here. I just pushed the wrong button. Bear with me. Give her a chance to tune in. I would say welcome to the Twilight Zone. It's Tuesday, but it's felt like a Monday all day. Hi, Rosalyn.
Hi. Am I oriented the right way?
You're going to flip your phone the other way. There you go. All right.
All right. There we go.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a wild morning.
Yeah, it's definitely Tuesday morning. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right on. Well, at par for the course, I've got to give you your actual introduction, so I'll do it now while you watch me, which is not too awkward. But anyway, so you've been working in design and decor for over 15 years, right? You started Wicket Interior back in 2004?
Yep, I did.
Yeah. Right, and I would say that I would say that you have a passion for decor and space and event design, and that's clearly contributed to where you've ended up today as a successful designer. You have a broad repertoire. I know that you work in personal spaces, but you've done some work also in commercial and kind of event type settings as well.
Yeah, my original background is more in retail and marketing. So when I decided to do a kind of career change into the more interior design and decor field, those kind of came with me, I guess. And so I've kind of done all three together. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing you noted in your bio here is you understand the intimate relationship of design and self-expression, and you work on devoting like unique designs that reflect the vision of your client. And that's one of the reasons that we like to work with you is your I guess your reputation is such that you approach every design as starting from scratch. And too often, and I made this mistake, as I did the design for my projects in the earlier years, and I would just continually repeat my style over and over. Eventually my wife pointed out, man, all your stuff will start to look the same. You better branch out to a designer. And she was absolutely right. And so I like how your approach is very much get to know the individual and then from there start the design process, not coming to the table with ideas that you've liked from past projects, right? So
yeah, it's definitely about the client and how they live in their home, how they use their home. Do you have kids? Do you have pets? And all those different things, and then what your style is, right? So everyone is a little bit different. So my style is quite eclectic. I have, a broad range of things that I love, but that doesn't mean that my style has to come into your home, right? It's what your style and figuring out what you love and what you want to be around. So definitely a bit of a different approach than some designers, but there's a different way to, that doesn't, a lot of times you choose a designer because of their style and how they implement it. I approach it just a little bit differently.
Right. Well, I like the fact that it's unique, and there's lots of great designers out there, but that's one of the things I like about you.
Oh, well, thanks.
So you've always been a lover of vintage fashion and decor, I guess, to the point where you must have, collected your own large collection that you couldn't hold on to and decided, I should maybe do this for a living as well. So there came Tipsy. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I definitely started collecting too many. So it's always been something. I mean, I think it was out of necessity in the beginning, right? It was when I first, moved out and my husband and I had our first home. We couldn't afford, new furniture. So it was, I got a few pieces from grandma, and then I thrifted, and I've always been a thrifter, but I always kept collecting throughout the years, and then it was definitely a, now I have too many things. I better start sharing them with everyone, and that's where Tipsy Palm came. Sure.
Right on. Well, that's certainly a cool venture. So let's talk about our giveaway item today. So Rosalyn has graciously donated a 1-hour virtual design consult. So to qualify for the giveaway, now maybe this question is too technical, we'll find out, will be just comment your favorite design style, right? And to give you an idea, I quickly did a bit of research this morning. I'm going to fire away a whole bunch. There's way too many. So pick one if you know what it means. If not, put one in, and then Rosalyn can help you figure out what your style is if needed. So I'm going to read off a few here. We got modern, contemporary, minimalist, industrial, mid-century, Scandinavian, transitional, French country, bohemian, rustic, shabby chic, Hollywood glam, and coastal Hamptons. So if any of those sound like that's your style, then enter it in the comments. And at the end of the show today, we'll do a draw for that 1-hour virtual consult.
I love that, because those words mean different things to everybody. So it's my job to interpret what the definition of modern is to you, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So I guess I have a couple questions for you. And I guess one of the most common ones that we face is, when do you engage with the designer if you're the client, right? I know as a contractor when to call, and usually after it's getting to know the client and seeing that they're a little bit unsure about what they want, right?
Right.
Or if what they want seems terribly misguided, then at that point also. But for you, I guess, when you're to give advice to someone out there who's planning a renovation, maybe a new home build, whatever it is, and they need to consider the design, when should they call you?
I mean, there's different points, definitely. It depends on, you know, what type of information you're trying to, I guess, collect. So, you know, I do have people that just sort of call me at the very beginning before they've gotten started with anything, to do maybe just a couple-hour consultation to get them on the right track. And then they might just go on their own and continue with their project and consult with me later on. But as you said, you know, having some, you know, if you have a contractor, having some information compiled with them, and then, you know, sort of bringing me on midway there. Once you've made too many decisions, sometimes it's difficult for me to kind of then guide you the other way. But no matter when you contact a designer to come in, you know, it's my job to say, okay, you know what, I need you to get this kind of information together before I can really be of use to you, right? So really at any point, it's a good time. And then it's my job to say, okay, maybe think about X, Y, Z. Things like budget is a big one. I like for clients to have an idea, a pretty good number in their head. So often contacting, you know, someone like yourself helps them know what that budget really actually looks like, put some numbers to some ideas. So, you know, it's all about discussion. So I don't think there's any like kind of solid one particular perfect time. Yeah.
I would say that from my perspective, it's important that you would engage with your designer and your contractor fairly soon thereafter, whoever the first person is, because we've had projects before where the client comes to us looking for a contractor and their design is complete. And on one hand, that's great. For me as a contractor, it's easy to then go and price it out. But if the designer wasn't well aware of what the construction costs were, sometimes you end up with this design that the client loves and it's truly beautiful, but it's significantly outside of the client's comfort zone on a spend.
Or not even times, right?
Right, absolutely.
Have to know what's up inside that ceiling or what the, you know, I mean, I have a general idea from being in the industry, but that's not my expertise. So it is all about creating that team from the beginning that can help you guide it through. And it's a money saver and a time saver to create that team together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side too, you know, if you go too far down that path with your contractor without considering some elements of design, you could end up with a project that you really aren't happy with the end result. And or we've gone too far into the rough-in stage to really be able to make some changes once the design is finalized without undoing work that's been done. So on the, you know, I think a good contractor knows the importance and value of a good designer, and on the flip side, I think a designer would probably feel the same way, knowing boy, a contractor sure could help guide with what is affordable for the client, and is this concept that I have doable, or is it going to require Herculean effort and cost to make it happen, right?
And it helps to have a contractor on board too, to help me, sort of to give me an allocated amount. Say, you know what, we're allocating, this amount for flooring, so that when I'm going out and helping the client choose materials, I'm going to get them the best quality material that fits within their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, if I have, carte blanche, I'm going to probably tend to pick something too expensive for you, right? We're always going to be gravitating towards the most beautiful and the best quality product, but that doesn't always fit, right? So there's always the save and splurge. And I find that's what I love about working with, having a good relationship with the contractor on the project. It helps me keep the client on budget.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that keeps everyone happy in the end, right? Because as a contractor, in my early years, you would always think, oh, the more the project costs, the better for us. But I've seen too many clients over the years kind of overcapitalize or spend more than they wanted to on the project. And even though we did a great job finishing and they got what they wanted, what they didn't want is to spend $50,000 more than they planned to in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, important to help kind of coach them through. And now in my senior years, I understand the value of keeping the client on budget. And I think it's key. And often, like we always ask the potential client, what's your budget for your project? And some people don't want to share that with us because they're worried that we're going to spend it all. Or maybe they don't actually know what their budget even is. They don't know what the price range should be. And that's where at least then they can have a candid conversation with their designer and might be a bit more comfortable in working out their project budgets with the designer as opposed to the contractor, because ultimately the designer is not going to spend their money or directly, it's the contractor who will, right? So I know I hate talking about money too much, but it's a big part of it, right? Because
it's important. And as you said, not everyone wants to talk about it. And so that becomes, it makes our job a bit more difficult if you aren't willing to kind of have that candid conversation about it. I don't want to know your finances by any means, but I do need to know what we're looking at here, right? So whether, you can get all the projects done at this time, or whether it's, maybe we do your kitchen now and in a year's time we do your bathroom then, if this is what you're, I don't love cheaping out on a project either. So, you have to do quality. You can't always make it, but I like a save and splurge attitude towards most projects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I guess that would be, go for something more affordable in one area to put a bit of an upgrade elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
And there's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I guess as far as the design process goes, someone knows, okay, look, I'm planning my kitchen or whatever it is, anywhere in the home, you have a space to renovate, and you've identified that you need and want to work with the designer. What's the process like? How do they start? What information do you need, and how do you recommend they get that stuff together?
I like to come, when I come to a client's table, I like for them to have some imagery, I guess. So I love House, for example, for clients to pop into House and just to start pulling images. I love magazines, so even just pulling photos out of magazines. And I always tell clients to kind of, show me pictures of things you love, but also show me pictures of things you hate. So, and they don't all have to be interior. So show me things that inspire you. So these are things that start conversations for me to be able to get a better understanding of clients. My questions are usually about, how do you use your space? Who's using the space? All those types of things. So that's really where I like to get started. And then it's my job to kind of, decipher that information.
Absolutely. That's one thing that we often do with the client early on is recommend they go to House or Pinterest or wherever and kind of make an album and just go through and select images that you're attracted to, right?
Yeah.
Whether for example, this picture that I posted here. So, and we often will ask the husband and wife or the partners, whatever it is, to do this independent of each other.
Yes.
To see whether or not they come back. So this one, for example, you have a nice dark blue vanity. You have some brass hardware. You've got looks like a quartz countertop, maybe marble.
Yeah.
You got black framed mirrors. The lighting looks darker as far as the color of the sconce. There's a lot of different design aspects to this one image. And you never really know why someone might have selected this. If it's right away, they're drawn to the dark cabinet, but they might not actually want the brass hardware.
Right.
You don't know, right? Or maybe they are drawn to the circular shape of the mirrors. They don't care about the shape of the vanity or the color of the vanity. Sometimes our clients, when they assemble these albums, they don't even realize what it is they like. Something in that picture is like, wow, this is cool. And then when we go through, we look at them and go, well, is there a trend here? Have you selected primarily dark colored cabinets, or look, it happens to be all brass hardware? And that's how we start. And I would imagine the process is similar for you. But I think for people in general, it's a great thing to go through that process before you engage your designer, so that you might have a better sense of what you want. And it saves some of your time as a designer to rule out the things they might not actually want. Because when we go into a design agreement with our clients, we allocate a certain number of hours to each person for design time. And each client's different. Maybe they want more help on the design and selections than they do on actual going to the showrooms, or maybe they'll be happy after the first color boards put together. Maybe they won't, but I think it all depends on how much they know about themselves and their taste first, right? Mm-hmm. And we've seen it too often where you have a partner, two spouses don't agree on a like fundamental design issue.
Job is being a mediator, like it's a design mediator between couples, because it's often, once that conversation gets started, it's something they've never really talked about before. So as you said, having people sit down and choose those images separately it's a good idea, right? But back to also saying, pulling things that they really don't like gives me a good direction as well. It's interesting when I get to see things when people say, I just hate the color purple, for example, or something. I really know, it gives me an understanding of things that make them uncomfortable, that they don't like, and it helps me really narrow down what they do like, because often people have a hard time actually describing what they like. They have an easier time knowing what they don't like, what makes them uncomfortable. So it's a switch to look at it that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think like each person, like, again, what I like about you is you take each project and it's very much going to be unique from the get-go, and everyone has their own sense of style. And I think when you're considering your design, you need to think about what your goals are for, and why are you taking the project on? Are you trying to sell the house next year? Is this your long-term home, right? That's where we fit in, right? We don't like doing the houses. We're going to prep it for sale because it's a different approach entirely. And you think your design is the same thing. If it's for sale, then you might want to look at muting or being a bit more subdued about some of those polarizing choices, right?
Yes.
This headboard wall, for example, in this bedroom, that's a love-hate kind of a feature. Some people are going to love that, and
my old master bedroom in my old house, and this wallpaper, it was this custom wall mural that I installed, and yes, there was a love-hate reaction to it. And I do know that the people that moved into the house after me did pull it down, and I just about cried when I found that out. So yeah, it's not for everybody, right? For sure.
And I think that's a big part of the design process, is going, look, what's the reason you're taking on the job, or why are you doing this, and who are you trying to appeal to? If it's for yourself, you're going to be in this house for 10 more years. Realistically, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. This is for you, because in the way that our society works now, a 10-year life cycle on a home is pretty standard when it comes to a remodel, right? And there's the more timeless things that are out there, but if you're going with some of these very hot, trendy items, you might be tired of it in a decade, right? And we'll talk about that more later in the show. So if it's for you, then just go wild, do what you want, right? Love it.
Yeah, love your space. It's yours. So yeah, it's about, and in those design trends, that's where the save and splurge comes in too, right? So, the furniture in the space that maybe you're investing, a lot of money in is going to be more about the quality, more about, longevity, but the accent chair is where you go wild, right? So there's the balance there for the kind of two options.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I'm just scrolling through some of your bedroom photos here just to see the different looks out there, and you can see they're all very unique, and a lot of it, like for example, this bedroom, all the color and pop is coming from the color of, the throw blanket, the accent cushions, things like that, right? And that's not a permanent. You can replace those no problem without a reno, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you decide you want bright lime green tile on that wall in a herringbone pattern, it might look super cool for a while, but when it comes time to change that look, I mean, that's getting stripped down to studs basically, to change the look of that. So just be very aware of where you're going to put that pop, right? And is it easily changeable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with something like that's if you wanted to say do a full tiled wall, maybe it's in a more neutral palette so that it appeals to you for a longer period of time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
not about not tiling the wall, but maybe lime green isn't the right choice,
Yeah,
right?
true enough.
This is a photo of I don't know if you're familiar with the Vignettes design series.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
been heavily engaged in it. Yeah.
Yeah, this was one of my vignettes one year. So we did a mid-mod. So we divided the space in half. So one side was kind of a bit more current interpretation of mid-century design, and the other side was the more retro side of mid-temporary. So it's
Absolutely.
hard to photo, but the floor is actually divided on a diagonal. The furniture is divided. So it was a really fun space to create.
Yeah, I remember it well, actually. We were in it that year. I was with Nikki Fliss,
Oh,
and
okay.
we did the Cosa Nostra.
You guys did a great.
Vignette.
Yeah, that was an incredible space.
Yeah, I remember yours though, and my big fat head right now is blocking the picture, but you have a super cool fireplace in there, and that wallpaper is also cool. And that's another easy way, I think, to add some color and a feature is use some wallpaper, because that isn't too terribly expensive to deal with. On the inexpensive side, you can cover it up with paint, right?
Wallpaper is pretty easy to remove now. So it used to be that terrible, when you removed it, it left the paper on the back, but that's just not the case anymore, right? So wallpaper is fairly easy to steam off. It's easier to get it back to your drywall state, so you can either repaint or re-wallpaper. And yeah, it's huge impact and makes such a statement. And there's just so many incredible papers out there right now.
Absolutely. Let's talk quickly about our giveaway. I tend to forget about it until it's too late. So Rosalyn has offered a 1-hour virtual consult. So to be entered into the giveaway, you need to just comment your favorite design style, right? So I'll give you a few: modern, contemporary, minimalist, Scandinavian, transitional. I like this one, shabby chic.
Yeah.
Anyways, whatever your style is.
In a long time. That's like Debbie Travis paint this house kind of days.
Yeah, I Googled them this morning and I had a laugh at that one. I'm like, oh, that's a funny name. Hollywood Glam seems pretty self-explanatory, but I have Alyssa Fessick asking if Pottery Barn is a design style.
Yeah, that's funny. You know what? That is actually interesting, because I will sometimes, if a client doesn't know how to describe their style, I will reference a certain store that has, there's definitely like you're a restoration hardware kind of style, or you're, so yeah, Pottery Barn is like a transitional, I would say, with a bit of country. It's a beautiful design style. It can range for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe one day Tipsy Palm will be another one of those design styles.
Yeah, that's an eclectic design style. That's what that is.
For sure. Well, shout out here. We have Capensis Metalwork. My friend Elaine is watching the show here. She was my teammate in Vignettes that same year you were there too. Mm-hmm. She's a metalworker. She does great work. I'm trying to get her on the show, but hopefully this summer she'll be out there. She does some really cool metalwork that, anyways, moving right along. So let's see here. We showed some bedrooms.
Yeah, I think I sent you a range of very random photos. My work is about a wide range of things I do.
Right, absolutely. Here, this, I'll go out on a limb. This would be Scandinavian.
This would be, well, this is definitely mid-century modern.
Yeah, okay. So I'm referring, I guess, to the furniture, but hey, what do I know?
Yeah, so the wall, so that's all teak, and that's a wall unit. It's original to the home that was built in the 60s. So that's rare. That's actually my sister's home, and she bought this beautiful home, and this was in the office when she moved in. And often they've been pulled down, gone, and so they're really rare to come by, and they're a really cool, interesting well, you know, I mean, we're redoing them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, everywhere now, so that's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it certainly is. We did a reno in whatever Laurier years ago, and it was 50s bungalow, and they had these nice walnut shelves, like just gorgeous. And the client was like, "Yeah, no, we don't want to throw them in the bin." And I was like, "No way!" Like they're in my garage. This is like 8 years ago. They're still in my garage, just waiting for the right project to pull them out. They'll probably end up in my house someday, I'm assuming here, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I believe your wife has a bit of a vintage style. So if you've got walnut shelves in there, I'm sure that she could figure a place for them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're talking about when to call in a designer. So we talked a bit about, I guess, sooner than later, and identifying what their style is in advance by, selecting images. So where do they go from there? They've reached out to you. You have an idea what they want. To kind of describe your process.
So after I've sat down or had a video call with a client, and we've talked about what, yeah, sort of given me an idea, I guess, of their likes and dislikes and what spaces we're working on. From there, what I like to do is sort of do up a design inspiration document for them. So I'll pull some imagery, I'll pull some finishes that would be applicable to kind of this space, and sort of just put together sort of a virtual or a document that's got sort of a design plan to it, before I go out and actually pull the physical finishes. And I send that back to the client with sort of some preliminary ideas, some preliminary finish selections to ensure that I'm on the same page and I've read them correctly in our initial meetings, as far as color choices, finish choices, things like that go. I find by doing this, it eliminates it saves time. It eliminates me from, having to go out and pull samples several times.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of is that one step prior, to going out and actually physically pulling the samples, meeting with the client and going through actual samples. It helps to ensure that I've read them correctly and make a few of those tweaks. Gives them something to comment on, and what from there, then I go out and actually pull physical materials that I know now at that point. Usually we have a better grasp on budget and what the allocated prices are for people, and so then I can, I know exactly we want the tile to be a cream in color, and I know the client likes a hexagon shape, so I'm going to go out and I know exactly what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So it saves everybody time. It saves a lot of back and forth that direction. So it's something I think I've done over the years that's a little bit different maybe. And it's also because I don't always do the full finish selection for clients. So one of the services I actually offer is just up to that point where it's a design plan. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll go to clients home with them, come up with this design plan for them of what I think they should use, give them where they can source it, and then they take it and implement it themselves. So there's a lot of different ways to use a designer.
Absolutely. Let's talk a bit about how we're approaching design and samples in this weird world of COVID right now. And I know that like we're offering virtual design consults,
Yep.
right? And for the clients we have right now, we're offering, look, we can either have the samples delivered to their home for them to review, or we do offer they come into our boardroom where we have a fair bit of space to meet with the designer and the client and talk it through together. And each
Right.
individual has their own comfort zone as far as what they're okay with right now. So how are you approaching that?
Yeah, a lot of doorstep drop-offs, for samples right now. So, most of our suppliers are, able to get us supplies. A few things have taken a little bit longer at the beginning, but I think everyone's kind of figured out what that path is right now and how to navigate through this. So yeah, it's definitely, yeah, a lot of doorstep drop-offs, and then often, once the client has kind of put the the materials out, they have their design plan in front of them, we can then, you know, have a virtual chat, and go through those materials, you know, together.
Absolutely.
Apart. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say right now, for those folks out there who are considering their project, like the design stage is certainly doable through virtual video calls. So definitely don't be afraid to start the process. We have a client under a design agreement right now who was really scared about starting the design process, wanting it to be done face to face in her home. And there's so much legwork to do up front
Yeah.
before you really need to be in the home to work on the project and finalize the design. So certainly, you know, engage with your designer sooner than later. You can do the video calls and definitely get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and I mean, just jumping on a video call with me and walking me through you know, your home, and showing me, your space, what, you know, what's staying, what's going, what drives you crazy, what doesn't, and just sort of, you know, if you can take my eye through your home with your phone, that's a great, you know, starting point. I don't need to physically be there. I just need, you know, to see and have an understanding of your space and what you're looking for. And then, you know, depending on your comfort zone, like I did a color consultation for an existing client, and we knew what space I was going to be looking at. So they weren't kind of around. They left the door open for me. I just went in, kind of did the color consultation for them, left them the colors there. And then we discussed, you know, afterwards sort of
Mm-hmm.
what were, and how they should implement it. So it doesn't always have to be, you know, standing beside each other to get things done.
Very true. I think one thing we've ran into right now, which I think will let off a little bit now that we're getting to further stages within reopening Alberta, is getting to some showrooms. And I
Yeah.
know that one of our major plumbing wholesalers had their showroom closed. So, you know, again, like it depends on the person too, right? A lot of people can select things from online images and they're comfortable with that. But some people are far more touchy-feely and need to see it in the flesh.
And
And
with finishes, that can be difficult, right? Because I know, especially for plumbing finishes or light fixtures, um, brass isn't always brass, and neither is
right.
matte, right? So depending on who's producing it, it doesn't always. And I'm not a stickler for everything being matchy, matchy, matchy. I do, mixing metals is great. I actually find it more interesting, but you know, if it's within a space you don't want, anyhow, some clients, you know, it's hard to see that online. So
Yeah.
going and knowing how especially for like a kitchen faucet, knowing how that tap works ergonomically, and whether that's your, whether that fun that works for you. So yeah, plumbing's been a tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I guess then, so generally in the process, and you put together kind of a color board, and I guess the next step, and one of the questions I would have would be, is that enough? Or as the designer, will, from the designer, will that client require elevations or layouts? Do they need actual plans drawn up? And that's a bit where there can be overlap between your contractor and your designer, but I think it's important that the client understands what their design requirements will be.
Hmm.
So selecting your fixtures and finishings is one aspect of it, but then also it becomes, well, how is that communicated to your contractor, right?
Right.
And often that's kind of where the ball can be dropped often, where, you know, the contractor doesn't ask some really important questions until it's not too late, but until the last minute. And that can be stressful for everybody too. So, you know, we, as a contractor, I love it when the designer comes and here's elevations, all the layouts are complete. Here's my as-built drawings, my demolition plans, and my new proposed layouts. I love the complete package, but that's going to cost a lot more than a design consult for fixtures
Right.
and finishings, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's yeah, that's the full range, right? So there's lots of ways to work within that. You know, I do like to give, you know, definitely like a tile layout, because, you know, choosing the finish or choosing the actual tile is one thing, but
Mm-hmm.
installing in the right pattern with the right dimensions, of just the way it's laid out can make or break it.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, you know, how your grout lines on your shower line up to the grout lines on the floor tile, because they're
Mm-hmm.
different. And what does that curb look like, and where does the thing line up, and where's the schluter, and do we need to add another inch to that, or all
That's
those.
right.
I like to give a tile layout, and the tile layout that I'm doing on paper, especially with a renovation, is one thing, but then it's meeting on site, because in a renovation, right, there's the millimeters of difference from the floor to top. Houses aren't square after years of, unless you're ripping them right down. But anyhow, meeting with the tile setter is another important thing, I think, before the tile gets installed. So there's sort of steps that I think are important to have me involved in. I know that for budget purposes, sometimes those have been removed, and then it comes back to me, and it's blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you didn't want that information from me, and I can't, so there is, having your designer involved in small parts along the way, even after material finishes, can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
I think, it's the little inches of like, oh, but that mirror is 24 inches. So this needs to be, there's just these rules in my head that, balance out.
Absolutely. And I think, that's where the contractor and designer work together closely, right? I mean, our collective goal is to execute as close to flawlessly as possible. And even if there's hiccups along the way, to leave an end product that is outstanding for the client. And there's a lot of forethought that has to go into some of these things. And speaking of shower, like a niche, people often want a niche. Oh, great. You want a niche? No problem. Well, do you want the tile within that niche to line up with the grout lines of the adjacent tile to it? Do you want, there's so much to consider in a niche, and the amount of calculating that goes into the framing plan on a niche is significant. And that's, I think, where clients...
A niche.
Sorry?
So people often think of that, and then all of a sudden they've got these gigantic warehouse bottles they can't fit. So it's my job to find out, what are you putting in that niche? How do you want it to function? Is it just for aesthetics? Is it actually, anyhow, there's so many small details. Yeah,
absolutely. So I would say to anybody out there who's hiring the designer, set some budget aside to allow for elevations. They can be hand drawn. It has to just communicate the layout. So the client understands exactly what it means, because they might not understand the terminology, whether it's a herringbone or whatever the pattern might be. There's a lot of different things you need to consider in that layout. Do you have enough room for something like a herringbone, right? If it's too cramped of a space, I wouldn't recommend it. Or if you've chosen a large format tile for a backsplash, well, it's just going to get cut up into tiny little pieces, because it has to fit around everything, and you're going to have backsplash receptacles cut into them. And so give some thought, put some consideration into what the value is within, that investment into the designer. So there's my little...
Agreed. And that goes down to, what type of client you are, right? Like some clients are quite able to visualize and are quite able to have a good understanding maybe of the process. Maybe they've gone through a reno before,
right?
Maybe have it, right? So it's also about what your comfort zone is, for someone to kind of take you through that project. And often, I mean, I know I keep going back to budget, but often people will eliminate some of those things to save a little bit of money, but then mistakes are made and it actually ends up costing them more money in the end.
Oh, absolutely.
And like your time and your energy through this renovation is important as well, right? So it's not as expensive as you think to keep, your contractor and designer on your team through the whole project.
For sure, I agree. Let's give a heads up to our draw again today. So if you just tuned in, Rosalyn's offering a 1-hour virtual design consult. So to be entered in the draw, you need to comment your favorite design style. There's a whole bunch of them. I read a whole list earlier. I'll give you an example of a few. Maybe your modern, contemporary, minimalist, mid-century, Scandinavian, transitional. The list goes on. If you don't know what your style is, just tell me your style is awesome. We'll take your word for it. And then Rosalyn will truly help you figure out, what you need within your project, right? Could be a simple color consult for any one room.
Yeah, totally. It can be suggestions about space planning, furniture moving. It can be, should I put a wallpaper here? Whatever. I mean, color consultations. Small little, just a great concept. Whatever you need done around the house.
Sounds great. Thanks for doing that. Let's talk a bit about Tipsy Palm.
Sure.
So it is called what's it called again? Sorry, I've lost the term. I always wonder what it meant. Curated vintage market. So
Yeah.
explain what you mean by that.
So, well, when I started Tipsy Palm, it was definitely inspired by my love of Palm Springs. And when I'm in Palm Springs, I'm always going to the markets there because they're beyond incredible. So just decided, that's where it kind of decided this, I want to do this. I want to be a part of markets here in Edmonton. I want to bring a bit of what happens at these Palm Springs markets to the Edmonton market. So that's where it originally started, as I would do outdoor markets and pop-ups and things like that, and just sort of enjoy that part of it. But the reason I added curated onto it is because I'm not just a secondhand or thrift shop. It's very curated, so it's very much specific to certain design styles, certain quality. So it definitely, a lot of mid-century was where it started, a lot of mid-century kind of Scandinavian boho kind of feel to it. But as time has moved on and our trends have moved on, and what I'm finding has also, what's available kind of in the thrift shops or where I'm sourcing, I've moved from kind of the 60s and 70s, and I'm definitely moving more into the 80s and 90s of what I'm curating right now. So I guess when I use the word curated, it's about, that's where I'm taking, this is my style. This is my style. I think these pieces are incredible and I'm bringing them to you. So it allows me to bring my style to a shop, whereas Wicket Blue is more about defining your style. Tipsy Palm is my style all the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go to tipsypalm.com, there's some really, really cool items there for sale. I was trying to go through your site on my phone today and snap some shots to show them, but I ran out of time. But I guess one question I have, and because
not everything right now, but because I just had to move my shop, so a lot of my pieces were in storage. I did have a physical actual shop for the beginning of the year. Anyways, the space is no longer available to us, so I've moved Tipsy Palm back into my home, so I have two businesses running out of one office right now, so it is a bit chaotic. But anyhow, the website is going to be updated over the next few weeks, and you'll see lots of really fun pieces coming up.
yeah,
For sure.
super cool. And so you sell there not just like furniture items and decor, you also have clothing, correct?
Yes, so it evolved into clothing. So I've always been, as I mentioned, sort of a thrift shopper for clothing for myself, and my kids, my family. I just find, for me, it used to just sort of be, it was a way to find unique pieces. And then I started to learn a lot more about sort of sustainability, and I learned a lot more about the fashion industry and how awful some parts of it are.
Mm-hmm.
So it really got me on board with the sustainable fashion side of it. And again, that was sort of when I was out there sort of sourcing clothing for myself. And I would come across these beautiful pieces that weren't in my size. I always had a hard time leaving them behind. So there was born the fashion side of it. I just couldn't leave them behind. I had to bring them home and find a new home for them. So that's sort of where the fashion side of Tipsy Palm came from.
Nice. I know, my wife, she's been a huge fan of yours, and I didn't know our worlds had overlapped there at all. And she was telling me she went to Ritchie Market and a couple of events to look at your stuff, and she loved your
great market. Yeah.
Yeah, and she had bought a few dresses, and I know we went out one. Actually, it was to the gala for vignettes this past year.
Okay.
And she wore this, I guess you call it vintage, this pink dress. I don't know much about what it was, but she wore it up that night, and she got so many compliments on her dress. It was crazy, and
one of a kind, unique pieces. And what's incredible about vintage clothing is, the quality is just, I would probably say 80% of the clothing that I resell is made in Canada, right? So that how it was made was, pretty incredible. But there's always that little detail, right? The design details that make it quite unique. So I love that she was getting compliments on her piece.
Yeah, she loves it. She gets really excited about it. And one question I have for you, and this has been something that I've always wondered, is what is vintage and what's just old?
Well, vintage is actually defined as anything 20 years or older. So vintage isn't that old when you think about it. So it's kind of a broad term. For me, anything that's worth, reusing, being old versus something vintage that I might incorporate is its quality, right? So as we're moving forward and our vintage pieces are moving into things that were maybe produced in the 90s, they're not quite the same maybe quality as the stuff that we were sourcing that were produced in the 70s. Because that's when, in the 80s and 90s is when we started a lot more production overseas.
Yeah.
The mass production of pieces, right? So that's what's so special about mid-century modern pieces and the teak pieces we find in the Danish and all these things. The quality of the furniture it's so incredible and it stands the test of time. So as we're moving forward, the quality of some of the pieces, it's harder for me to source, the good quality pieces from that. They're still out there, but it's definitely a smaller niche right now.
Absolutely.
And I mean, a lot of people look at vintage and just think it's old. It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. I mean, there's some things that are nostalgic for people. A lot of people have been there for the previous design era and aren't interested in going back. Right now in trends, we're seeing a lot of influence of sort of those terracotta colors and the earth tones and the greens in there. And it's reminiscent for people of when we did the whole peach and mint back in the early 90s. If people did peach and mint the first time, they're not going back there because it was on everything. It was like honey oak, peach and mint, and it was like your whole house was that. So if you've been there before, a lot of times you're not going back, right? So that's sort of how a lot of it evolves too, whether you can do it again.
Yeah, very, very true. I think it's kind of a shame, like we see it a lot, especially nowadays there's so many things that are kind of disposable. So it looks cool, but it just has like such a short lifespan. And it's kind of heartbreaking. My dad is a cabinet maker, furniture maker, and he makes just this beautiful stuff. And he puts so much time into using like quality materials and the joinery and the finishing. And it's just beautiful. He made these collapsible desks that for COVID times where people have not enough space for homeschooling. So we made these desks and they're beautiful things, and you can't sell them because nobody wants to pay for it. They see something for $150 at IKEA and go, this is the way to go. Meanwhile, what he's building is meant to be passed down through the generations, and it's a shame. You see that in furniture now and everything. Like it's such a shame. There's my little rant. Like I wish people would just pay for quality because I think it's such a better investment. You support local craftsmen.
Yeah, better, not more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great explanation of vintage, it's quality products that have stood the test of time and they can continue to be used. Mm-hmm. And, everything is cyclical, right? So some of it will come back around and some maybe can be refinished and reused in a different way and repurposed, right?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And yeah, as even going back into sort of interior, like I truly encourage even within renovations in people's homes that, let's look at what can be reused if there is something. Okay, if we can't reuse it, where is it going? I don't, the first answer isn't just into the bin.
Right.
We want to contact Restore. Is it something that they can resell? Habitat for Humanity is an incredible organization, and Restore, that's an amazing place to source things for renovations as well. And another one of my favorite ones here in the city is Architectural Clearinghouse. Yeah. If you're familiar with that, it's an incredible store. They do, they have everything there, everything, right? So I like to incorporate, I love when I come across clients that are about having, a bit of vintage, a bit of antique incorporated with new, right? I think it makes for a really interesting design.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say we got 10 minutes left in the show. Let's give another shout out here to our giveaway this week. So Rosalyn's offered up a 1-hour virtual design consult. And to be entered in the draw, just comment your design style, your favorite design style. Modern, contemporary, minimalist, mid-century, whatever your style is, you're not too sure, just tell us your style's awesome.
I'll help you figure it out.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. So back to like you were saying, the Restore, Architectural Clearinghouse, These places, they're fantastic. Like I try to never throw stuff into the landfill unless it has to be, because there's always a way to reuse a product. Like I often wish I just had like 10 cabins and I could constantly be furnishing, and because there's so much stuff that can be reused. And even within our projects, we see so many good, like there's just someone's taste has changed. So we tear out something that was, we recently, well, I guess a few years ago now, we tore out a 2-year-old kitchen, quartz countertops, everything, like, because the buyer of the house
Yeah, yeah.
didn't like the look. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. You know, so we managed to resell most of it for them, and try to find a way to repurpose some of the stuff. But definitely, yeah, check your local marketplace. There's lots of places to buy used items that really, they can become kind of that focal point sometimes too, and a really cool story at the very least.
Yeah, yeah. They always have a story behind them, and I mean, I'm always yeah, always trying to mix it in there, right? And it's, yeah, I think we really do need to look at like our industry in particular really needs to look at the wastefulness of it all.
Yeah.
Things, what we're sourcing, is it, where is it from? Supporting local, as you said, people like your dad and the local furniture makers, things like that. And it's not just about jumping on Wayfair and ordering everything from there. I'm not going to say I don't use Wayfair, because I do, but I try to source locally where I can. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a couple things commented. Your friend Kendra here has given you a shout out earlier on, saying hello. Um, and then I've Kevin Cordy's asking, do you source used items for customers, or do they source first and design around them?
So do I source used items for?
Yeah, like will you source them for a customer? Or...
I would say a bit of both. So I don't do a lot of furniture just because I don't have the means to house it all. But I definitely have sources for furniture for clients. And if there's something specific you're looking for, or there's an idea we have on how to incorporate, um, then I go out and source it for you, right? So, recently I sourced some lighting pendants for a client for their kitchen island that were from the 1920s. We sourced them from a reseller in Vancouver. So yeah, we go out, we get an idea of what we're looking for, and we find it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing whenever I'm kind of giving clients advice about design or selection, I typically, and this is my little process, is I ask them, like, fall in love with something, or what is it that you love, and let's use that as the foundation of the design, the basis for it. And typically that's one way to get someone really emotionally attached to something, and from there they might be able to express themselves in other ways. And that's where a good designer comes in, right, where they can really help to capture all that information, and be, present a good reflection of that client's style.
I mean, travel is always something I bring in for clients too, because it's like, well, it's such an amazing place to get inspiration. And it's sort of like, well, how did you feel when you were in, wherever it was? I recently was fortunate enough last year to travel to Italy, and I couldn't believe how amazing Tuscany was, and the colors of the earth there, and all of the just everything about it. So I've been really influenced by that in my own design in the last, in my own personal spaces, just because I want them to evoke how I felt when I was there, right? So there's so many different ways to fall in love with your space and to be inspired to create it.
Absolutely. And I always recommend, like, to people who are considering moving perhaps, or before you move and you go buy a new house and a new development, like, look at your home, look at your lot. Where do you live? What is truly the potential of your home, right? Like, I'm a huge fan of the renovation. I like the process of the transformation of a home in a space. And like, sometimes people don't understand the potential of the home they live in now, and that's where I think it's worth entertaining the thought of a reno before you decide, I'm just going to list it and go buy a new infill somewhere, which at least you're in a mature neighborhood. But anyways, entertain the thought, and then if it doesn't work out, then a good designer or contractor will just give you the facts and help you to set you up for a win on your choice ultimately.
Ultimately, yeah. 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 I mean, considering a renovation before moving, it should always be the beginning of the process, unless there's, the neighborhood isn't where you want to be. But yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we have a winner, and you're gonna have a laugh because the winner is Kendra. She's
Oh,
the winner of the design consult. So
Kendra is probably one of my best Tipsy Palm clients.
all
So
right.
her filled with treasures from Tipsy Palm, as is her wardrobe. So I will have a blast working with her for sure.
Nice. Well, congratulations, Kendra. Thanks for tuning into the show. If anybody has any questions out there, please hit us in the comment section. We're happy to give you our undivided attention. We got about 5 minutes left, so please do fire away. If you have any questions on a more detailed level and you want some advice, certainly can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk you through your project or help direct you in the right people or give you whatever advice that I can. So you can always call my office, 780-455-4446. Rosalyn, how would they get a hold of you if people want to ask you for advice, learn more about your services? What's the best way to do that?
I would say, yeah. I mean, if we're on Instagram, just direct messaging me to get the conversation started is a great way to do that. So either I'm at Wicket Blue or at Tipsy Palm, and we can jump from there. In my bios of both my Instagram accounts are links to my websites. My email information is all there. So jumping onto Instagram, having a look at sort of, some of my stories and things like that, just to get a sense of my style and who I am. And then, yeah, just direct messaging me through there is a great way to start.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's funny, this show is always an hour long, and sometimes I wonder if, is there enough content to talk? And I find at the end of every show, like I could just keep going. I
Well,
have lots of
yeah,
questions for you still. We didn't really talk a lot about your products from Tipsy Palm, which is a shame. Maybe we'll do another show based on that. We can, help to kind of spread the knowledge of what's out there, and people can open their minds up to how they can introduce vintage item into whether it's a new house or their existing home.
yeah, I mean, that could be a whole nother show for sure. Just talking about sort of, yeah, where to incorporate. Because a lot of people do find that, right? They feel like it's clutter, but there's a lot of really great ways to incorporate vintage pieces into your home with your.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, in the end, like it's all about that character of your home. And, especially like for us, we renovate older homes. It's like, what can we do to retain some of the original character? So whether it's reusing the materials from that, maybe there was some sort of piece that could be used in a different way, whether it's a flooring product could be reused as a wall cladding, or
Mhm.
whether it's an old window could become a mirror, whether like there's just so many cool options, of things, and it takes a bit of time, and yeah, you need a craftsman to help you with some of the stuff, but it's worth it.
The architecture of the home, right? Especially with older homes. So, um, something in Laurier Heights that's a vaulted ceiling bungalow, that needs to be taken into account when you're adding the other finishes to the home so that it feels cohesive. Um, the house has a story already, so you have to respect that in some ways.
Absolutely. I'm gonna show you these stairs. This is from a 50s bungalow close to my office here that we're potentially going to work on, and these stairs are these like concrete pre-formed. They're
Yeah,
just gorgeous, and
yeah.
the client initially wanted these things torn off, and I was like, not a chance. Like, let me refurbish these stairs. Like, let's get those railings off. But look at the steps; they're just amazing. And
But even the railings. So I mean, green 1950s, but with a coat of black paint, like that's
yeah,
not far off from what we're starting to reinstall in people's homes.
yeah, that's a good point. I guess I couldn't see beyond the rust and the color there at first, and I
Yeah,
just wanted the stairs to pop.
get their style, then Architectural Clearinghouse will take those for sure,
Yeah,
right?
no doubt.
Yeah, but yeah, those stairs are amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Rosalind, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was the Art of Renovation Live with Wicket Blue Interiors and Tipsy Palm. And if you want to chat design, then certainly you can get a hold of Rosalind anytime. Well, I'm sure she has some hours she's closed, but reach out to her. Social media is great. I did post her Tipsy Palms web domain a bit earlier in the show, so you can look for it there. But tipsypalm.com. Again, continuing a renovation project, want a general contractor to talk to, I'm happy to help you out, give you some advice, steer you in the right direction at the very least. Thanks so much, Rosalyn.
Great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Everyone
Bye.
take care.